got labels which shows you the direction of water flow. We also have it color coded, so blue is prior to the filters. These are the filters. We change the green after the filters, so that's the water coming out. We use red for the heater. Put over the heater here, which is still going to get gas and everything. And then we use black and white for our wastewater and dirty water. So that doesn't have water going through it until we're actually cleaning the filters. So in the front of the pump, there's two pipes coming up into the pump. Those are our suctions. Those are the water that's being drawn from the pool. One is labeled as our skimmers, one's labeled as our main drains. The valve on the skimmer, if you notice, is straight up and down, parallel with the piping coming out of the floor. So the skimmer valve is fully open. The main drain valve, we've got half closed. That's what's allowing us to draw just a little bit of water off the floor of the pool, but the majority of it's coming off the surface through the skimmers. From right there, the water is traveling to a hair and lint strainer in front of the pump. It has a clear top so you can look inside and see how dirty it is. So then I would come over here and in the front of the heater I would shut that off when the pool is running. Now I can go to our pump and I can shut our pump off. There's a starter on the wall right here. Flip the switch over to the off position. The pump is now off. Now in order to change the strainer basket, I need to open this top, but I want to keep the prime on the pump to keep the water in the piping, so I'm going to isolate this. So there's one valve after the pump, right here. I can close that. And then we have the two valves on our main drain and our skimmer. Closed and closed. So now the pump is isolated. The lid is just a quarter of a turn, and then it lifts off, like so, and the basket can come out. I was vacuuming this morning, so a lot of this is the debris that was in the pool this morning. There is a spare basket, so you can have a clean one ready to go. There's a hole in the front of the basket. That should go towards the wall. If you don't put it towards the wall, it won't sit all the way down and you won't get the lid back on. So basket goes in. There's an O-ring that should sit on top of the strainer pot. There's a groove here for it. Sometimes it comes out as it did here. Just want to make sure that that's in good shape and in place. Make sure that surface is clean. Same with the surface here, because that's the sealing surface. And our lid can go back on. She's locked on. Now I can open our valves back to the position they were. Skimmer all the way, main drain half the way, and then we can turn our pump back on. When we go to backwash mode, the water is going to be sent out this pipe here. The black and white label, that's our backwash, and then it's going to go down, I'm assuming maybe out to the pond or something like that. Okay? So we install these isolation valves on our backwash lines here. These are normally going to be closed, because underneath here there's a large gasket that wears out over time. And when it wears out, water starts draining out and leaking out that backwash line. So that's why in all of our systems we add that isolation valve. So it stays closed until we're going to backwash. If we're going to backwash right now, I would need to open both of these. So we're ready to go. Okay, now just like changing our strainer, I want to shut my chemical controller off. The toggle switch on the side of it, I would shut my heater off, and now I can shut my pump off. And then what we'll do is we'll push this handle down and we'll rotate it around to the backwash position. I would do the same thing over there, and then we would turn the pump back on. These are the chemical probes that are actually testing our chlorine and our pH all the time. Water's constantly going past her, and it's dumping back into the pool. Prior to that water getting to this cell here though, we do have a strainer on here just to catch any debris before it gets to the probes. So it's just a little wide strainer. There's a blue valve on each side of it. So you just want to close those, and then you can unscrew this. And there is a screen in here. You can see all the dirt and debris that it's catching. So, especially here until landscaping's done and all of that, and construction's complete, you're definitely going to want to check this. I'd say probably once a week right now. So, just clean that all a little bit. Then we can open our water flow back up. Okay, so from that strainer then the water's coming over here. There's a little spinning device here. It's a rotary flow switch. The biggest thing with the chemistry is we are feeding acid and chlorine, and we're injecting it into the pool piping before it goes out to the pool. We're injecting it kind of right next to each other. You never mix chlorine and acid. When you mix those two together, you get chlorine gas, also known as mustard gas. Extremely toxic and poisonous. So we mix them both in the pool piping together. As long as there's water flow, it's not a problem. We don't have any issue. So to make sure that there's always water flow, we have the pool pump interlocked with the chemical controller. So if the pump is turned off, the controller will automatically shut off completely. But we also have this rotary flow switch here. So if I stop the flow right now and make that stop spinning, you hear the chemical controller beeping. The only time that controller beeps is when there's no flow to this device here. So first thing I would check if I come in here and it's beeping at me like that, first thing I'm going to check is that strainer here. If that's plugged, it's not going to get the flow. Get that clean. If you still have a problem, next thing I probably do is clean my filters. I'm going to talk about the pH first. pH is on the right side of the controller. Right now it's saying our pH is 7.4. Okay? What I need to do is there's a test kit here. I need to test the pH of the water to make sure it's 7.4. Make sure that that's reading accurately. The state code says we have to be between 7.2 and 7.8. So as long as we're in between there, we can allow people to swim. So if I test it right now, and if a health inspector is standing over your shoulder, you're supposed to test at the pool. So you have to put the vial in the water, test it right at the pool. But there is a test here we can do right here. Usually I like to rinse the vial out. The instructions for each test are in the lid of the kit. So for the pH, it's filling it all the way to the top line. And then we add 5 drops of the R004. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 drops. And then there is a cap that goes on. We want to mix that up good. And I don't typically want to look directly at a bright light or anything like that, or directly at the sunlight. Usually I like to have a kind of a white background. Somebody want to match that up and tell me what she looks like. You want to match those colors. 7.4. Perfect. So our set point right now is 7.4. Splashing at me. If I wanted to change that, it would be up and down arrow to get it to what I want, and then push set point again to save it. So I recommend 7.4 is where you're going to want to be. So again, state says we can be 7.2 to 7.8, but I want to be 7.4. The reason I want to be towards the lower end of that pH scale is because the lower the pH is, the better chlorine works in the water. Okay? We're spending money on chlorine, I want it to do the best job possible. So I'd love to be at 7.2. That's kind of the state minimum. There's a chance that I can go below that. I don't want to. So that's why 7.4 is a pretty good number.
That happens after the inspector walks in.
Correct, exactly. And then they're shutting you down. Nobody wants to sign on the door saying closed by order of the health department. That doesn't look good. So 7.4 is where we've got it set. So we're feeding an acid. So the pH of the water is always going to want to go up because of the chlorine we're using, because people jumping in there. So if the pH tries to go above 7.4, the controller is going to see it right away, immediately, and it's going to turn the pump on for the acid, which is here. And it's going to start feeding acid out of here to the pool to keep the pH at 7.4. As soon as it gets to 7.4, it's going to stop putting power to that pump. Make sense? Proportional control, you shouldn't need to change that. It should be set to 001. So if I push proportional control and then push pH, it's set to 0.1. Okay? Don't change that. Next one is your safety timer. So if I push safety timer and then push pH, currently we have it set for 60 minutes. What the safety timer is if the pH climbs above 7.4, the controller says, okay, start feeding acid to keep the pH down to 7.4. And if it feeds for 60 minutes straight right now and doesn't get to 7.4, it's going to stop feeding and you're going to see 60 flashing on the pH side. That means it hit that safety timer. Usually that happens when the pH or the acid barrel runs out. So don't let it run out. It's going to be your safest and best bet. You won't have any issues as long as you keep things full. So, but that's what the safety timer is. To clear the safety timer, you can either shut the controller off, power it back on, that'll clear it and it'll start feeding again, or you can push the pH button to go to off. That 60 will go away, and then you can push it back to auto and it'll start feeding again. Okay. Next one is the set point. Again, probably shouldn't need to change it. 7.4 is where we have it. I'd leave it there. Calibration is that next button over, like I showed you. And then the next two are low and high limit. Basically, I want the low and high limit around wherever our set point is. Right now, our set point is 7.4. So the low limit right now, we have low limit pH set for 7.0, and high limit pH we have set for 8.0. The operators, once you're up for the season where people are using the pool, you might want to tighten them up a little bit, say 7.2, 7.8 for low and high. But for now, we got them a little bit wide, especially with all the construction going on. Nobody's using the pool and the plaster's curing. You will use a little bit more chemical right now while the plaster's curing than you will once like next season comes around. Okay? So when I test our chlorine level, to test chlorine, we're going to fill it up to the middle line, same side that we used on our pH. We're going to put 2 scoops of this powder. Again, this test, the instructions are in the lid of the test kit. Just 2 scoops of this powder. Usually I make them slightly heaping. If there's chlorine in the water, the sample is going to turn pink as it did. The bottom of the vial has a white disc on it, so it's best to look straight down against that white. So it's pink. Then we're going to add 1 drop at a time of this brown bottle R871. Each drop I put in here is 0.2 parts per million. Okay, I'm going to keep adding drops, mixing it up until it goes clear. Now you can count the number of drops and then multiply it by 0.2. Otherwise, what I do is I just count by 2s. So, for example, 2, 4, 6, 8, 1 part per million. We're still pink. 2, 4, 6, 8, 2 parts per million. Lightened up a little bit, but still pink. 2, 4, 6, getting clearer. 8, 2.8. Right now we are at 2.8 parts per million. Okay. State of Wisconsin says for a swimming pool such as yours, we need to have a minimum of 1 part per million of chlorine in it, maximum of 10 parts per million. As long as you're in that range, the pool people can use it. Okay. I'm going to describe what ORP is ORP is kind of the measure of the quality of the chlorine. Okay. So we're going to use that qualitative number to control the quantity. Remember what I said earlier, the lower the pH, the better chlorine works. So right now, if I shut my ORP off, I'm not going to feed any more chlorine to the pool. We know we're at 2.8 parts per million, right? If I go out to the pool right now and dump a couple gallons of acid in it, our pH is going to go down, right? When pH goes down, you're going to look at this number over here and it's going to skyrocket. That ORP number is going to go through the roof. Okay? I'll test my water, I'm still at 2.8 parts per million. And what's happening is that chlorine, because of the low pH, is turning over to a stronger form. That ORP number is going to show you that. Okay? Vice versa, if I go out to the pool and I raise that pH to say 8.0, that ORP number is going to go down. Still have 2.8 parts per million of chlorine in the pool, but it turned over to a weaker form. That kind of makes sense? The best way I can try to describe what ORP is in the first place. So it's a measure of the quality of the chlorine. So before I do too much with ORP as far as making any adjustments or anything, the number one thing I need to do is make sure my pH is correct first. I want the pH to be 7.4. Make sure the water is at 7.4 and the controller reads 7.4. Then I can start looking at the ORP number and deciding, okay, do I want more chlorine, do I want less? All right? We're at 2.8 parts per million. If I look at my set point, and I push the set point button and I push the ORP, our set point is 750. Okay? So chlorine is going to get used up, which means that the ORP number is going to go down with less chlorine. So as it goes below 750, it starts pumping chlorine like it is right now out to the pool to keep that number up at 750. And you notice right now the number it's actually reading is 739. Okay? That's why it's feeding chlorine. It's going to try to feed it up to 750. Once it gets to 750 and our pH is 7.4, then I can look at my chlorine test kit again, see where the chlorine level is. If it's below 3, I can increase that set point just a little bit to say 755 or 760. And then once it gets to 760, as long as our pH is 7.4, I can check my chlorine level again. I can raise or lower that set point. Once you find that set point that gets 3 parts per million, you won't have to change it again. Okay? Alkalinity is the green test. Alkalinity we want between 80 and 120 parts per million. Right? Typically, right now with the new plaster, the alkalinity is going to be going up, just with the curing of the plaster. But eventually, once the plaster is cured out, your alkalinity is going to be going down. Because as we feed acid for the pH, the alkalinity is going to want to go down. So then we'll need to add sodium bicarbonate, baking soda, to increase the alkalinity. And again, you want to keep it between 80 and 120. The blue one, we don't have to test as often. Maybe once a month, or once a week, I should say. Let's do once a week. Calcium, we want between 200 parts per million and 400 parts per million. The reason we're testing out calcium is because water is known as a universal solvent. If it doesn't have any minerals in it, it's going to find the minerals it needs somewhere. For example, concrete. If you have condensate water dripping on concrete, it eats it away. Because there's no calcium in condensate water, so it pulls the calcium out of the concrete. Same thing with the swimming pool. If the swimming pool water doesn't have enough calcium that the water wants and needs, it's going to start eating the pool finish, the tile grout, whatever it can to get the calcium it needs. Cyanuric acid or a stabilizer. Basically, chlorine gets eaten up very fast by the sun. Okay? So what we add is what we call stabilizer or cyanuric acid. Think about that as like sunblock for the chlorine. We want to get that up about 20 or 30 parts per million, typically. Probably not so much this year anymore. But that'll help the chlorine last longer in the water.